Anthony's television is much better than anything we ever used to get.
I once saw an episode of The Twilight Zone where a boy with godlike powers forced everyone to act happy all the time. This was of course meant to be a nightmare, but it's not purely a fantasy. This place exists in the real world, and it's called a Hollywood press tour. At first, it might seem natural that the stars promoting a movie pretend to be friends with everyone all the time. After all, they want people to like it, right? But you don't see this in other areas.
I don't really like you, Luke, so I'm not going to answer your question.
So while it may seem obvious on the surface,
Harry, I'm so happy to see you.
I found that there's much more to this than meets the eye. And I'd like to tell you about some rather unique things going on that cause everyone in Hollywood to pretend to be best friends. Okay, first, in most businesses, there are tangible measures of success. If someone proves a famous math problem, or they have the best stats, or win a championship in sports, everyone knows exactly who the best person is, who they want to follow, regardless of how that person acts outside of the game.
Is that a good sign for the rest of the playoffs?
Next question.
Or in other situations, the person has an appointed office where they perform functions that are supposed to benefit people away from the media, at which point the reporters are just a necessary annoyance.
We are not going to be taking any questions. Thank you, guys.
And other performers, like musicians and comedians, comply their trade to audiences by themselves, so they aren't required to be nice to them. And thus, in fact, abusing the press and treating people terribly is actually common for most public figures.
I never cared about the audience anyway.
It's actually actors, and almost only actors, who go out of their way to pretend like they're friends with the press and everyone else, even though they're under the same pressures to convince people to see their movie, as athletes and others are when promoting their sports or other products. These actors are far more careful and have far less leeway than even them. So what gives? Well, I found that it comes down to the actual nature of each product. Like we said, in these other fields, there's provable results or other services being performed.
Yeah, that makes sense to all our poker strategic
I don't care if it makes sense to them.
This actually isn't the case with entertainment. In entertainment, the product is entirely based on feelings. You might have box office, but even that depends on how people felt about what they saw. So whether or not a product is good, whether it is well crafted, is indistinguishable from other things that affect people's emotions. We talk about that a lot here, but one of the things we've added to that idea recently is that appealing to the feelings of many people is very different from appealing to the feelings of one person. The feelings of one person are prone much more to unpredictable things like their mood or personal experiences, which affect their judgment much more than an individual thing's quality. So entertainers get results that are much more consistent with the actual quality of their work when they go to large audiences, where those random individual feelings average out. That works fine for musicians and comedians who can perform by themselves, but it's different with actors, isn't it? An actor always has to be part of a larger production, so they must be chosen by a director, casting agent, or executive. This means that actors are always subject to the individual feelings of one person. And like we've talked about, when we have to interact with people individually, that person's value to our own lives actually overpowers any other feelings we may have about them. If someone hurts us or seems like a jerk, our brain will actually shut off our emotional reactions to anything else that person may do. So the value of an actor, their ability to get hired, depends on whether or not they can make the people who cast them like them. Far more than any normal profession or job interview. And even more than whether or not they are actually good actors or appropriate for the part.
Hey, you could do anything you want to him. He's just happy for the opportunity. Rick?
I don't dig him.
And there's not much that can be done about this. As long as individual people make casting decisions, those individual people will have to rely on their own emotional reaction to seeing the actor. And these personal things influence those emotions far more than if they were watching them in a movie audience. Now, of course, personal relationships matter in every business, but this goes way further. No matter how much money is on the line, or how experienced the people making those decisions may be. And over decades, the entire movie business has adjusted to this. The actors we see on screen and in interviews instinctively pretend to love everyone around them.
I just couldn't be happier.
So much so that it's a scandal anytime they act differently. Now, of course, if you asked them, they'll just give you a very broad answer, like that it's good to be a nice person, it's a normal part of promoting the movie, and all that stuff we know, even though the extreme degree to which they have to do it is something they usually learn from habit. The ones that did it right were more likely to succeed, no matter what they knew about their own actions. So it ends up, like many things in life, something that we all do, even when we can't say why. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. We'll talk more about these things in the future, and thanks for listening.